Hey everyone, it's Miss Queen Crypto and I am back again on the Embily channel for another episode of Friday Block Talk. I apologize if I'm kind of squinting right now. I did get my eyes dilated earlier today, but you gotta record a video, gotta stay dedicated to my craft. So here I am. I'm not trying to smize for the camera or play it up. It's just I'm sitting in front of a window and it's a little bit bright. I'm doing okay. It's fine at this point. It's just a tiny bit uncomfortable. But we're not here to talk about my eyes today. I wanted to talk about a pretty big deal in the global economy, but also in Bitcoin that happened recently. I'm not sure when this video is going to go out, but at the time of me talking about this, it's pretty recent. I think most of the initial hype over it has kind of died down, but it's still a really big deal. I wanted to talk about the gold discovery in Uganda and why people in crypto are talking about it deeper than just the comparisons we draw from gold to Bitcoin, like Bitcoin's digital gold. It's not just because of that, and I kind of want to dive into why. So with that, let's get into it. So for those of you who might not know or might not have heard the news, there was recently an extremely large amount of gold ore that was found in Uganda, weighing approximately 320,000 metric tons worth of gold, which is trillions of dollars, which is a crazy discovery and great for the country. However, it does have implications for the global economy and for gold trade in general. And that's because of a pretty basic principle, which is stock to flow ratios. I know I've talked about stock to flow ratios previously in regards to Bitcoin and drawing in those comparisons as to why gold is such a precious commodity versus just other things that might have even more practicalities. However, this is a really big deal because year to year, decade to decade, the stock to flow ratio is pretty constant. That's not something that really changes. The mining of gold is a process that you can't really invest a ton more resources in to get more product out of it. It's kind of a chance game. And so we end up having a pretty constant supply of gold entering the economy and entering the world year to year. And so you've got the big pool of all the gold that exists in the world, and the flow is pretty minimal. It's like a small little stream. Now this gold discovery is like dumping an Olympic size pool in a bucket, basically. Because I could have my numbers wrong, but I'm pretty sure that the amount of gold in circulation right now is approximately 200,000 metric tons. So if their number is correct and they have 320,000 metric tons of gold that they just discovered, that is crazy. That is blowing our current supply out of the market. Now, that raises the question about the value of gold, because most people who argue against Bitcoin or say that Bitcoin is not a good store of value are people who talk about the advantages to having gold instead of Bitcoin. Why would you have Bitcoin when you can have gold? Now, that's been a fair argument because we haven't had any crazy stock to flow issues. There hasn't been anything that's inflated the gold supply. This discovery in Uganda will indeed inflate the gold supply. We talk about inflation when we're talking about fiat a lot because it's easy to print more money. And if you print more money, you're basically decreasing the value of each dollar because the wealth or the value of it is still the same. That's how our government money works. However, with gold, it's a little bit trickier because gold has intrinsic value. At least we perceive it to have intrinsic value. So introducing it doesn't mean that the actual global market and the value of all gold stays the same, but there's more physical pieces of it around the world. However, it does devalue any gold in circulation already because basically you have to think in terms of supply and demand. I know we're getting really into economics today, and we're talking about it from my perspective, which is someone who took a high school class on economics. However, I've read up on the topic. I like to think that I can talk through these pretty easy concepts, these pretty basic concepts, but supply and demand. First thing I learned in econ, and it makes a lot of sense, just already off the bat. You want to make sure that you have the supply to meet the demand. If demand goes up and supply goes down, value goes up. But if supply goes up and demand doesn't, the value is going to go down and your price of the good is also going to decrease. So it's something that's in flux constantly. That's why Bitcoin's price goes up and down on the daily, gold's price goes up and down on the daily, different volatilities, I get that. But this is really big because the supply of gold, once it's all processed and refined and everything, would over double or more than double, which is crazy. Like, I can't even perceive how much, like, I don't even understand how they know that it's 320,000 metric tons. Like, that's insane to me. I understand there's imaging and stuff, but that's a big number. Like, I can't count that high. That's crazy. But it means that the value of gold is going to go down, which is something that I haven't seen in my lifetime, and I absolutely haven't seen since I've started caring about the price of gold, the price of Bitcoin, everything like that. So it's crazy. It's wild. But we're likely going to see the price of gold go down because the supply is inflated. There's far more of it, and the demand is likely to stay relatively the same. The people who are going to continue buying gold are probably people who have been buying gold. So where does Bitcoin kind of tie into all this? I understand I've been talking about general principles and properties that can apply across the board, but where does Bitcoin fit into this conversation exactly? So one of Bitcoin's biggest claims to fame is that there are ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin in circulation. And so Bitcoin mathematically has a guaranteed stock to flow ratio, and that's not going to change over time. You're not going to have a surprise discovery of double the current supply of Bitcoin just found somewhere that's going to re-enter circulation and be mined eventually and inflate the current supply. Bitcoin is a deflationary asset, mathematically guaranteed. So people are talking about this whole Uganda gold thing because it kind of shows why Bitcoin has value and why we can see Bitcoin as a more stable store of wealth, which sounds weird because I know Bitcoin is very volatile. I get that, especially currently and nowadays. However, when we're talking about long-term stores of value, you want to put your assets somewhere that's not going to increase. You want to increase your value over time. And a deflationary asset does exactly that. Now, most people who are opposed to Bitcoin have argued that gold is a superior product to this for years and years and years, like Peter Schiff, for example. But we're now seeing that that's not the case. Gold is an element. Gold is something that is on the periodic table. Crazy. It's something that we find in nature. And when we talk about the infiniteness of the universe, there's an infinite supply of gold. There's an infinite amount of everything. But I think for this discussion, it's important to talk about the system being like Earth. So if we were to draw a bubble around Earth, that's all the gold we're talking about. We don't know how much gold we can find. I don't think anyone was expecting to find 320,000 metric tons of gold like last week, but here we are. And there could be more deposits around the world like that. Now, we don't know if there are, and we don't know when they'll be discovered, but it's naive to say that there aren't. It's naive to say that that will never happen again. And so we're talking about a supply that is extremely variable, like a flow that is very variable, and could be crazy and drastic one year and then virtually nothing the next year. And that's scary. That's something that makes it even more uncertain than Bitcoin, where you've got your couple of Bitcoin mined every 10 minutes, your 4, I think, at this point. So it's an interesting topic of conversation, and I think that it's opened the eyes of big investors who might have been on the fence of Bitcoin, because obviously gold up until this point, and it still is, a good store of wealth for a multitude of reasons. And you can hear about that in the Bitcoin Standard and in the videos that I've talked about stores of wealth and Bitcoin and gold and all that. However, it's not guaranteed. That's the main difference. With Bitcoin, that store of value, you know the market cap. You know exactly how much there's going to be and when more is going to be introduced to the supply. With gold, that's a question. That's something that we cannot predict. You aren't going to have market analysts saying, I think that next year we're going to find maybe 100,000 metric tons of gold. That's not going to happen. And that uncertainty isn't something that you want. You want to minimize all risks when investing most of the time. I understand high risk, high reward. However, when we're talking about long-term investments, building generational wealth, I want to minimize any risks to my investment. I want to make sure that I have the best shot going forward. And for me, making sure that I have a knowledge and an understanding of that stock to flow and knowing when more is going to be introduced is extremely important. That's not guaranteed with gold, that's guaranteed with Bitcoin. And I think that this Uganda discovery has hopefully opened a lot of people's eyes. If not, it's made Bitcoiners feel a lot more secure in their beliefs. At least that's what's happened to me. So I think that's a solid place to leave this off. Let me know what you guys think or what your initial thoughts were when you heard about this. It was pretty darn crazy. I remember reading all of the articles and I was like, holy cow, that's absolutely insane. I was just like in awe. But if you enjoyed this video, please leave me a like, a comment down below. If you want to see more content from the Embily channel, make sure to subscribe. And if you want to see more content from me in particular, you can follow me on Twitter at Miss Queen Crypto. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye!